Welcome back, everyone. My name is Reed Blakemore, Director of Research and Programs at the Global Energy Center. We're here at the Global Decarbonization Accelerator Pavilion doing another one of our live from COP28 interviews, where we're talking with the civil society stakeholders, the NGO leaders, the industry leaders, and more importantly, the policymakers, all of whom are gathered here at COP28 to talk about how we're going to build a secure and sustainable pathway to net zero. I'm joined now by Alan Armstrong, President and CEO of the Williams Companies. Alan, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So
Thank you.
I understand that this is, your first time at a COP, right? This is a big COP, one where the energy industry is out in full force, and rightfully so. What brought you to this COP? Why this COP? And what was the opportunity you really saw here?
Yeah, well, thanks, Reed. Pretty simple for us. We've been trying to get the message out about what a huge opportunity we have in the U.S. to use our domestic resources to dramatically and at scale reduce emissions around the world, much like we've done in the U.S. by offering low-cost, cleanly produced natural gas to displace coal and heavier fuel oil that's being used around the world. And so not only we still have some remaining opportunity in the U.S., but importantly, we really need to get the message out about the opportunity that's out there. When you think about taking this very, very difficult challenge on, and I think one of the things I've seen here at COP is there is a recognition about how difficult this challenge is. People are really starting to look at it and go, hey, don't give me the easy version. There is not an easy version of this. But natural gas in the here and now, in terms of solutions that we have that we can take on at scale, can dramatically reduce emissions in the short term. That's not to say that we're not going to come up with better solutions long term, because I'm almost certain that we will. But as we sit here today and urgently need to be taking this on, we can dramatically reduce emissions immediately. For instance, just in the U.S. alone, we still have 238 coal plants that we're operating in the U.S. today. And that is the equivalent, if we would just replace those units with gas units, that's the equivalent of taking all of the passenger vehicles, gasoline-fired passenger vehicles, off the road in the U.S. Think about how hard we're working to reduce those kind of emissions, and we've got the capability of going and doing that. Over the last 10 years, we've taken the first 500 million metric tons out with coal versus gas, and we've got an opportunity to do the next. But what's really amazing is you think about how large scale that is around the world. There's 9.8 billion metric tons of CO2 coming out of coal plants today around the world. So until we quit increasing coal usage around the world, for people to say, well, I don't really like natural gas because it's just keeping us addicted to fossil fuels, I say, well, if you really are serious about reducing emissions in the here and now, why in the world would we not take advantage of a tool that we already have? And certainly the U.S. has the ability to produce it at a very low cost. So getting that message out, which frankly, I kind of thought, well, surely everybody knows that. And I'm amazed at how many voices and facets there are here at COP. And it's really showed me that, okay, well, I think it's clearly the most important tool we have. There's another 1,000 ideas here that are competing with that message. I frankly don't think any of them are as compelling, but that is one of the reasons I'm here, frankly, is to learn and listen to other ideas as well.
And of course, I think when you look at some of the early deliverables from this COP, right? We've been here for a few days now. Some of the tools and ideas coming from industry have actually manifested in rather positive ways. You have a really strong pledge on methane abatement, right? You have funding to back it up. You have this oil and gas decarbonization accelerator charter, right? Which is also another great way for the industry to kind of as a cohesive unit say, here is what we're going to do. Obviously, more needs to be done here. But when you reflect on kind of how the COP has gone thus far and how this, if we're going to call it the energy COP, right, has gone thus far, do you see a turning point in the role of the energy industry and the role of the oil and gas industry, perhaps in particular, in participating in a positive way in this discussion?
Yeah, well, that's clearly, why we are here. And I think from, to be absent at this and not be here and showing people that you want to pull on the same rope in the same direction with them, I think is really important. And all I know to do there's a lot of people that won't accept that, won't support that. But I think as people appreciate how large this challenge is, people are starting to realize we're going to have everybody pulling in the same direction on the same rope. And so I'm excited. I think it's great for the energy industry to be here and for the conventional energy industry to be here in force and to really showing that they're serious about what they have to offer in terms of reducing emissions. And we need all the tools we've got. And so anyway, I think it's actually very positive. I mean, there's certainly some points of friction, but I think at the end of the day, I think it's a very positive thing.
Sometimes it takes friction to get good stuff done. And that's just a reality. And when we talk about the ways looking ahead that, the conventional industry can take advantage of the foothold it's established for itself here. We were talking earlier, just before we went on camera, about the transparency and verification piece, right? There's a lot of the industry coming to COP and saying, here's what we can do. And now the next step is kind of, walking the walk a little bit. Talk a little bit, not just about kind of the transparency verification side and how you see that space evolving, but when we talk about tools for the industry to really back up what it's saying right now, what are those tools in the toolbox?
Yeah, well, I am so proud of our organization and the partnering that we've done with people. So we started at this probably 4 or 5 years ago. We looked around and people started coming up with like on-site sample monitoring. And we looked at that and thought, wow, that is going to be a bad outcome because it wasn't transparent. It wasn't continuous monitoring. It wasn't on the full value chain. It was just in spot locations. And we said, we really want to be a big player in this, but we don't want to be the tortoise. We want to be the hare. And so we started investing in companies. We invested in a company called Context Labs, and we helped them get started. And they actually have built blockchain technology that tracks all the way from a wellhead production all the way to the point of delivery through our gathering systems, our processing systems, our transmission systems, all the way to the point of use. They track the emissions associated with each MCF of gas. Now, people will say, well, how complicated can that be? You go from point A to point. That's not how a modern network works. There's all kinds of different routes that the gas can take on a system like ours. And so actually being able to put blockchain technology in place. And so Context Lab is a group from MIT that came to us and said, hey, we'd like for y'all to really think about investing. We were one of the very first investors with them. And we're very proud to be partnering with they've been able to go and sell that to a lot of our upstream producers as well in terms of bringing that technology. Secondly, we also then started investing. We've made 3 significant investments in monitoring. One of those is with Orbital Sidekick. So we have space on 2 satellites that are continuously monitoring our facilities. And so we're very proud to use that. And then we have 2 different on-the-ground technologies that we've invested in as well, one with Encino Labs and the other with LongPath. And so, the interesting thing about it is we're learning a lot. It is not simple. Like people spit out emission numbers like they're, absolute certain numbers. And the fact is there's a lot of background noise. When you start measuring at very low levels of intensity of fugitive methane emissions, you have a lot of background methane. So naturally occurring methane gets very, very challenging, particularly when you get to more urban areas. It gets difficult to trace that. So, but we have gone a long ways in doing that. And one of the things I've found that I just, I didn't see it coming was it's allowed us to attract great talent to our company because they're excited about the new technology that we're utilizing to monitor, and they're excited about what we're doing to really clean up the operations of our business and be a part of that. So it's attracted a great talent into our company, and they're excited to be working on that. Frankly, that's a huge benefit to us, but I didn't see that one coming.
So you're absolutely right. And I think that it's going to be in the technology space where I think you see a lot of dynamism moving forward as we see what we might call the verification transparency agenda that the oil and gas community is subscribing to participate in this credibly. Last question really here, as we look ahead, right? And, this being your first COP, hopefully we get you back here at COP29 and beyond. How has this discussion, right? And as you mentioned, participating in this community with such a diversity of ideas shaped your thinking about where you want to take Williams Company moving forward. What is it kind of, what sort of assumptions has it challenged? What sort of ideas has it solidified in your mind? When you leave Dubai at the end of this next week, what are you really going to be leaving with in your mind?
Yeah, well, one, I think, I'm excited to see the focus on methane reduction. I think that's great for our industry. I think it's needed. And it's one of the primary complaints that people have about using natural gas as a tool. And frankly, that is not hard. We can reduce our methane emissions to about nothing. We're already very low, but we can reduce it across our operations very low. And we want that to be unassailable. We want everybody's satellite taking a look at our stuff. We want complete third-party verification of that. And we are wide open to that. We want to know exactly what our emissions are, and we don't want to be surprised. So I think that's very positive about the. So that's one thing. I think it's it's a really great focus that we see. Secondly, the focus on nuclear energy is interesting as well. I think that they're seeing kind of a resurgence on that in the U.S. That's gotten so difficult to build that out on a timely enough basis. But I would say at the end of the day, it's actually given me kind of more confidence in our strategy, because as I look around for issues that can address things affordably and at scale and dramatically reduce emissions, there's just not very many solutions that can do it at such large scale. So I'm excited about our strategy, and I'm excited about people here at COP appreciating how big the challenge is. So it is a big challenge, and it's going to take all of us pulling in the same direction. And I think that's what we're starting to see a glimmer of here at this COP, is people acknowledging that it does need to be inclusive. And just because you're in the fossil fuel industry doesn't mean you should be excluded from being a part of the solution. The atmosphere has no idea if there's a fossil fuel company reducing their emissions or if it was coming from some other source. It only knows that emissions got reduced, and that's what we should be focused on.
That's absolutely true. And I think, one of the areas where you do have a positive story to tell is, when you think about reducing things like methane early on in the business, right? And you get ahead of the curve, you actually can gain the benefits from that over the long term. There's a first mover advantage to be had here in a lot of ways. And I think what you're doing is a great example of that. That's all we're going to take on right now. We'll be doing a lot more of these live from COP28 over the next 2 weeks here in Dubai. Until next time, please do stay tuned on our programming, both here at the Global Decarbonization Accelerator, more broadly throughout COP28. But until then, Alan, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Reed. Appreciate
Pleasure.
it.